CloudFabrix AIOps sessions. So these are designed to be a short sessions, so less on the product, but more on how AIOps can be used to solve your IT issues or problems or improve operation efficiency, and less on product. So today the focus is on the AIOps, the first outcome, which is very prominent among a lot of enterprises, is the alert noise reduction, and sometimes people also called as signal to noise ratio. So they wanted to make sure reduce as much noise as possible and only give the signals that are important. So today we have as a panelist Lars, who is based in Sweden. He's our sales director for Europe and Middle East and Asia region, and Ram Datla, who is pre-sales and solution head for this region. And we are very happy to bring these sessions to these markets, and we are pretty excited to start these sessions. So with that, so it's very quick, simple agenda. So we'll be focusing on specific outcome, which is alert noise reduction, and how you achieve that through grouping, correlation, and using the ML algorithms. We'll be talking about that, and also highlight what all things you need to be aware of when you are implementing this AIOps solution for this specific outcome. What are the things you should be taking care and be observing? And we'll have a short demo, and then as time permits, we'll be addressing some question and answers. And also just keep housekeeping items. You'll all be on mute, but you're all allowed to post your questions, and the panelists will be answering this as much as possible. And if we run out of time, we will get back to you. And this is also, we'll be recording this session. So, and if you are interested in having access, please send us an email, and we will provide the email address at the end. Okay, just a very brief on what CloudFabrix. I won't delve into too much, but we are a AIOps solution provider, and like all AIOps solutions, they are meant to address several use cases for the IT stakeholders using algorithmic or artificial intelligence or ML driven. So how do we improve your decision making and bring the efficiency but through that? So this is like high level framework, again, for mostly focused on IT ops and ITSM. These are the subset of outcomes we'll be talking, but but a very good framework for you to look at and how you start your AIOps journey. The first focus is on the alert noise reduction or alert reduction. So which means how do I make sure that today if you look at many enterprises, they have a lot of the monitoring tools, and they are by design, they look at, observe, monitor these health rules on a continuous basis and raise alerts when there is a deviation. So they have on the different metrics and different logs. So they tend to generate a lot of these alerts, which typically they end up being a ticket, and somebody has to look at it and and close the ticket. And oftentimes most of them are non-actionable because it's a transient situation. By the time people attend to that situation, the scenario must have changed. But still, they have to end up opening the ticket, assign ticket to someone, and close it with some notes. So these are all it costs money for enterprise, and the more number you have such things, it just adds up quickly. Other thing is, a lot of these alerts come in bulk because there might be something underlying root cause, and if you don't understand some of these patterns and ability to group them by common root cause, there will be a lot of duplicate effort. So either because of non-actionable or because of the duplicate effort, it's costing several millions of dollars, especially with high volume alerts cases. So it's a very, very important use case and very common use case that a lot of enterprises are looking to address with AIOps solutions. And this will be our focus. And over the next series of events, we'll be talking about other things. But in the interest of time, we'll get into these specific things. So if you look at, since our objective or outcome is alert noise reduction, so this, you can think this as a pipeline, what you have to do, and we will go into detail on each of the steps. Typically, most of the AIOps solutions work through this. The first thing is, instead of having these monitoring tools send alerts into a ticketing system or some kind of notification through emails or PagerDuty type systems, you need to route them into your AIOps platform. And that's where the AIOps will do the magic. And we will go into this each step and what are the things that will be done in each step. The first step is, as obviously as said, is ingestion. So as we said, instead of having these alerts going to directly into your ticketing or notification system, you need to send that into into your AIOps platform. So if you look at it, the left is the common monitoring tools, either metrics or log monitoring tools you typically encounter in most of the enterprises. Oftentimes people will have multiple of them, which adds the complexity. And you need to route them to your AIOps platform. And how do you do it? So it's very important to make sure that your AIOps platform support as many protocols as possible, as many mechanisms as possible, because no one mechanism addresses all the monitoring tools in your gamut. It's very important to get all alerts into your AIOps. The more data you can feed in, the more value you'll be able to get it. So webhook is one of the most common ones which we come across, and it's supported by almost most of the modern tools. But if you are dealing with some of the legacy tools, you need to look at other options like APIs, or sometimes even you have to go directly into database or file based. So you need to make sure that sometimes you may have to deal with the emails, because a lot of monitoring tools also send an email. So you need to make sure your AIOps solution supports all these different mechanisms. That way you can cover as many tools as possible, if not all. Right? Once you take those alerts, you need to normalize that into one common protocol. In our case, we use Kafka, and there might be other different mechanisms, different AIOps solutions uses it, but it's very important to you to normalize and get it into this. We found Kafka because it's highly scalable. It can support multiple, so that's why we choose Kafka. But it doesn't have to be Kafka; it could be anything. So now you have ingested into that, right? So the next thing is, this is probably the next two steps are the most critical in your journey, and one is the enrichment. So the biggest challenge with the most of the monitoring tools is you don't have a lot of information when you get the alert. At best, the severity and probably the CI, which IP address and host, and some short description. With that, you can't do very much. And one of the most prominent one is having a stack. When I say stack, it's a loosely coined term. It could be a service. So I need to make sure that I can give a context of a service, which means which application or service it belongs, or which group of devices it belongs. So the stack could be vertical or horizontal. We will get into the more details. And other second thing is, there's a lot of data, very rich data that is lying in your other sources. I mean, people have like sometimes CMDB there. I mean, there are definitely gaps, but nevertheless, there is information in CMDB. It could be your other metrics data or other monitoring tools. So you need to make sure that you have the ability to tap into that. And this is where very important for you to look at in these two categories. You need to make sure your AIOps solution can automatically learn the dependencies, build these stacks, and keep those stacks up to date. So a built-in asset intelligence is very critical when you are choosing your AIOps solution. Also, ability to understand what are the relationship between different sources. For example, when I get an alert and it has a device name, and I should be able to automatically know that from the device name, I can map to this particular table in CMDB, and I can get some more attributes. Or I can use the device name and I can look at my log files, I can get some more attributes. So ability to learn this dependency automatically is very critical, because manually doing it is not an option. If you have a small set of groups, it's okay. But if you have, if you're dealing with large enterprises where things change, these are the two critical elements. And third one is, a manual configuration, which sometimes works, but again, it's not as scalable. So making sure your AIOps solution can learn these stacks and ability to enrich and also understand some of the relationship between other data sources you have, whether it's from CMDB or things like that. So here is a quick example where we have a raw alert coming from with just 4 parameters, and we will be able to enrich this with a lot of other details. Sometimes we can, in our experience, 15 to 20 attributes is not uncommon, which gives you a lot of intelligence for you to make very smart decisions on how do I group it. So the more enrichment I can do on my alert, the better correlation I'll be able to get to it. So this is very critical. Again, as I said, those are the 2 key things: asset intelligence and ability to learn from auto data discovery, the relationship between different data sources. Now I have enriched it. This is another important. So I have to correlate. There are 2 methods I can do correlation. One is to set some rules saying that these are my known issues, these are the different alert categories I have. I can group them, but again, that's not very scalable, and it relies on people to provide a lot of domain knowledge, and it takes a long time. The other thing is to automatically learn it. This is where the whole ML algorithms would come in. So you can feed your historical data, and it can make some recommendations. It understands what are the symptoms or what are the alert categories you have, and uses that as a seed for you to start generating your policies. And then once you understand those symptoms, you can define the scope. The scope is very important, right? For example, if I say, I have user access problems, Srini having access problems, Lars is having access problem, Ram is having access problem. But these are all, access is the issue. That is what the symptom is which we are talking about. But how do I group it so in a way that I can route it for a specific service or for a different data center, or it could be an infrastructure versus application, depending upon how your organization is built. You need to have a flexibility on how do I define that scope. So that is where these attributes would come in, either a stack based or alert type based, or a time window is very important. So for example, I can say my time window, I observe alerts coming over the period of 3 minutes or 5 minutes. I'll look at all the alerts and see which correlation policies I have to apply, and then group them as one single incident. So that is typically how you achieve your alert noise reduction, by grouping them and with common root cause, and that is where the policies would come in. So very important for you to make sure that you have the flexibility, and these are the filters you have for you to give, pretty much cover all the scenarios you need. And then this is what we are talking about, right? Where you take your historical data and you generate symptoms and use the symptoms to create your correlation policies. And also you have an ability to change it, either by saying that I want this symptom to be observed for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, or on a stack basis or alert type, and we'll see those things in demo. But just to keep in mind, I have the symptoms, but I also be able to define the scope. So that's how I group them. And other things is the suppression. This is also a very common way to reduce your alerts, because and also you need to make sure that your AIOps solution has plug-in into your change management system. So very often people will have maintenance windows, or there's certain alerts or certain assets in the process of decommissioning. You need to make sure that you're not burdening your support center with those alerts that are happening from that systems. So you should have ability to, this pretty much is a correlation policy, but just instead of creating a instant or sending a notification, you suppress them, because that these assets are in maintenance window. So making it automatic is also very important. So if you have a change management system, and if your AIOps solution can take those feeds, it automatically learns your maintenance window policies, and it can suppress this automatically. So it's a very important attribute you need to look at. And finally, what it happens is, now I have grouped it, alerts. Now I need to notify my support center, and typically most enterprise will have some ITSM systems, which handles, knock-sock operations teams or command control teams, will be able to look at these incidents. And you need to also, very important is, you need to make sure your original alerts are not going away. You need to group them and make them available in your ITSM system. So the two-way integration is very important for your AOps. So which means, any updates, you will be able to create a ticket, update a ticket with new alerts coming into that group. So, and you should have ability to see all the tracking, what alerts are grouped and how they map to single instance. So that's where the whole alert noise reduction would end it. And here are the couple of scenarios, very important for you to make sure that you'll be able to address these different scenarios. For example, if I have a ITSM system or process organization that are interested in grouping alerts across the stack. For example, stack means a service. So it's not uncommon for a particular service to have bunch of alerts because of the same root cause. For example, a storage, there is an issue with the storage, then you automatically see problem with your database, and then your service will start degradation. So when you have run into that kind of cascading situation, you need to be able to group them. And for example, there could be other scenario that infrastructure team only wants to handle group things within the infrastructure. So you should be your correlation policy should be able to support the use case where I only group alerts that are happening within a horizontal layer. For example, a switch going down, your storage is not able to access, and your servers are also not able to access. So I want to group those alerts that are happening in the time window, which is what is defined as 3 minutes or 5 minutes, the configurable window. I should be able to group them. So this kind of flexibility is very important. There are several use cases like this, several scenarios. Again, depending upon your organization and ITSM, you need to make sure your AIOps solution can support this flexibility. So with that, we will go into a demo where we will cover up on what we have just seen. So here is like quick window. Again, as we talked about, right? This is the outcome we are looking at. So you have a bunch of alerts coming in here. In this case, 2,000 plus odd alerts, but those are all drilled down into 179 incidents. So those alerts are grouped. Some are suppressed and some are correlated. You can see which alerts are going into matching the correlation policy, which ones are, and then the incidents. Again, these are all different correlation policies that are being effective over the period of time. Some are like storage errors are grouped together, some at like stack level, stack performance. So you have a lot of this flexibility. So based on the correlation policies you have, and you can see how many alerts are grouped under single instance. So this is what is at a very high level. I was able to reduce about 90%. Over a period of time, this is something achievable, but you probably will start around 60%, 70%. It is slowly, gradually increases it as you fine tune it. And we will get into how we create the correlation policies and how we got into the ingestion. So we'll quickly see it. But again, before we get into it, this is like also you need to make sure that you have good analytics. You need to understand where they are coming from, which correlation policies are being active, so you can continue to fine tune it, making sure your correlation policy is effective. Somebody has to keep an eye on it and fine tune the system. But again, as much as possible, you need to make sure your AIOps solution have these recommendations coming through continuously train your historical data. So we will learn about how we got here, but just to give you a high level, this is what the outcome we are looking at: reducing the noise or alerts. As we went through that pipeline, right? The first pipeline is alert ingestion. So you typically will see bunch of your alert sources. You have Nagios, Prometheus. They're a very common monitoring tool, and these are the different types we have touched upon, like webhook, Kafka, or API bias. And this is where you start mapping. As you add new alert sources, you will be able to add that source into this platform. This is what the ingestion would come in. And then the second thing is the mapping. So where the mapping would be, because each alert source may have a different nomenclature, like, it could be severity, it could be 0 in one, and 4 could be another. So you need to make sure you normalize those things. That is where you take care during the mappings. So as much as possible, you need to look for a configurable or JSON or some kind of configurable options where you can change these things instead of relying on a vendor to go and give updates. And also other things is, what are the enrichment pipelines, whether I have a CMDB or other sources. So this typically you will do that pipelining here. So you do these mappings here, and this is where the whole enrichment process will start happening. And then the correlation policy. So correlation policies, as we said, there are two ways to do it. Either user can create your own policies, but most important is your tool should support the ability to generate these recommendations using ML experiments. Again, you should make sure that you have ability to run experiments. It takes some time because you may want to try with few parameters, whether it's in the cluster sizes, things like that. You can continue to optimize it, and you can see the clusters, and you can, based on the recommendations, these are all the recommendations coming from your ML experiments, and you can take any of these things and generate a policy. So, and this is where when you create a policy, remember we have talked about the filters, like, asset type, time window, stack based. So you have an ability to define the scope here based on the symptom. You can define the scope. So you can say whether a data center or a alert type or my stack, whether it is stack could be whatever you can define. And as I said, very important that the stack definition has to be keep up to date, because things change, right? Sometimes you may add a new VM or new storage to your particular application. It needs to be automatically reflected here. So that is very important thing for you to take into effect when you're evaluating this thing. And similarly, the suppression policies. So that is what we have done. So now we have shown how we are ingesting from the different sources, how you are enriching that, and how you are creating the correlation policies, and finally the incidents, that here. And then you can also see these are the incidents that are going into your ITSM systems, whether it is ServiceNow or Jira or Service Desk, so Sharewell. So you need to make sure that you have a two-way integration with the different ITSM tools, and you can also see what alerts are part of that incident room. So with that, that pretty much sums up our this thing. And if you have any questions, we have like a couple of minutes left. So our panelists will be able to answer questions. And if you are any interested in further things, we can also send you the recording. And finally, as we said, this is a series of sessions that we are starting for this region to educate people or help our partners and customers and prospects to understand what all possible with the AIOps, the outcomes. Again, this is all focused on outcomes. And the next one is on 10th June, where we will be discussing on, once you get the incident, how effectively you can resolve that incident with contextual incident. So that is, and reducing MTTR is what the outcome is typically called. So we'll be talking about it. And you can also register by visiting our website, cloudfabrix.com/29minutes. Or if you have any queries, you can send email to sales.eme@cloudfabrix.com. And again, once again, thanks all for your attendance and taking your time, and stay safe and stay healthy.